Olá, muito bem-vindos todos vocês a esse nosso encontro semanal, nesse espaço que nós temos aqui, que é a freedomeE TV. O programa de hoje traz uma entrevista com David Icke. A Francesca Job fez essa entrevista com David Icke, que alguns devem estar se perguntando quem é. Ele talvez não seja tão conhecido assim no Brasil, mas ele é uma figura reconhecida no mundo inteiro. Por quê? Ele é polêmico, tá? Ele já foi jogador de futebol, ele já foi repórter, ele já foi apresentador de programa de esportes, ele já foi porta-voz de partidos políticos, tanto na Inglaterra quanto no país de Gales. O David Icke, ele é britânico. Mas ele é polêmico por causa de suas obras, como escritor. Ele já tem 20 livros publicados, onde ele expõe os seus pensamentos, suas ideias, suas visões desse mundo, dessa realidade que nós vivemos meio conturbada, né? E então o que acontece? Uma pessoa que se expõe dessa forma, ela está sujeita a críticas, é claro, né? Então tem ao mesmo tempo em que ele atrai milhares de pessoas para suas palestras, tem uma legião de contrários a ele. Mas isso é bom, faz parte, né? Na busca do conhecimento a gente tem que fazer isso mesmo, ouvir as opiniões alheias, concorda ou não, isso é de cada um, mas sempre ter respeito, né? Porque é isso que nos faz evoluir, ir adiante na busca do conhecimento. Então, David Icke com vocês, aproveitem e a gente se vê.
Well, I'm super honored to receive David Icke to the freedomeE channel. And I'm here to ask for the person of the truth to tell the truth for the Brazilian and Portuguese people. So, David, how could you summarize what we're going through today?
Well, it's been a very long story and a very long road. And it's now reached a crucial stage, because there are two worlds that we live in. There's the one of the population, which is born and then goes to school and university maybe, and goes into the world of work and all that. And then there's another world of what I call the global cult, which is a global network of secret societies and connected groups that living in a different world, and the difference between the worlds is knowledge, it's information. So we have this network of secret societies for a simple reason: it's to keep secrets. Well, who from? With the population. And the two major areas that we have to be kept in ignorance about are A, where this cult is taking the world, the direction it's taking us, although that's become more and more obvious in the last 2 years. And secondly, crucially, we have to be kept in ignorance of the nature of the very reality that we're experiencing and the very nature of the I that we are. And so a whole system has been set up, which has been developed over, in our perception of time, a very long period. I mean, we're going back thousands of years to the start of the process, in which you control the information that the target population gets. Because what you're after is their perception. Because from their perception comes everything else. Their behavior comes from that, everything comes from that. So perception is what you must grasp to mass control a population. And so you introduce an education system which is nothing more than a perceptual download. It's two main elements to it. One is you tell people from the earliest age what they should believe about the world, about possibility, about everything, about history, and what they should believe about themselves. And the other element of it is that you, from the earliest age, ensure that they realize that if you do what authority tells you, you have a certain outcome. And if you challenge or refuse to do what authority tells you, then there's a very different outcome. And so the two things from the very earliest ages, when children go to school in, 3-4 years of age these days, is to start the process of downloading their perceptions for life, of reality, themselves, everything. And secondly, to let them know that there are consequences for challenging or questioning authority. And it's much easier if you just go along with what you're told. And this goes on through your formative years. And then you go out into the world of work and you meet lots of people who've been through what you've been through earlier than you. And they have overwhelmingly bought the download that you've been subjected to. And so everyone's confirming to everyone else that what they've been told is true, because basically they haven't heard anything else. You've got the media now 24/7 that are underpinning in the way they report the world and supporting the perceptual download that you've been getting since you came into the world. And people therefore go from cradle to grave with a perception of reality that is nothing more than what the state in its various forms has downloaded you to have. And the next part of it is to give people consequences throughout their life for not buying the download. So if you, I call this download the postage stamp consensus, because it's such a narrow band of information and sense of the possible, which is what they want you in. They don't want you knowing what's going on. And so if you, from when you're at school, when you're at work, or if you're in the public eye, you step off the postage stamp and you start saying things or questioning things that this cult doesn't want you to question. And you get the consequences, you get the censorship, you get the attacks, you get the abuse, you get the ridicule and all the rest of it. And so it's a carrot and stick from the very early stage in school. It's a carrot and stick process. Do what authority wants and we'll kind of leave you alone. Although, you'll have to do what we say without question, but we won't treat you like we'll treat the ones that are questioning us. And so today you have this manifested in front of you in the most blatant way, in the way that those that have been fake vaccinated are treated, and those who have not been fake vaccinated are treated. This is a classic expression of this process I'm talking about. Now, in the other world, through the initiations, and I'm talking about the inner core of this secret society network, not Bill and Joe down the Freemasons Lodge, in the local town. They have this knowledge passed on through these secret societies of what the agenda is for the world, more and more centralization of power until it's total global mass control, which is where we've moved massively further towards in the last few years. And secondly, this is the real nature of reality. And the real nature of reality is so different from the one that the population is given. Population is basically told to believe in one or two things, overwhelmingly the first. And that is that this world is solid, that it's physical, that everything's apart from everything else, that nothing's connected, that we're all just an individual cosmic accident, and that, we come from nowhere and we have a few seconds or 100 years as a human, and then we go, into nowhere. And the only alternative to that is that we are basically subject to a loving God who threatens us with great hell and fury if we don't do what he says. And it's always a bloke. So these are basically the two worlds. And what people like me have been doing is uncovering what's in this world, what the plan is, and uncovering the nature of reality that they're trying to keep from us, which will set us free, and passing it on to this world. And when you do that, as I, I've been doing now for 32 years, you get enormous amounts of abuse and ridicule, because this world, one of the great areas of programming, perceptual programming, is to squeeze the sense of the possible. So you want people in a very narrow band of their sense of what's possible, what can happen. So when someone like me comes along and says, actually, this is what's happening, and this is how they're manipulating you, the response is, well, that's impossible. You're mad. That's impossible. That can't happen. But the fact is, it's not impossible. It's that you believe it's impossible, and they're not the same thing. So you get in mainstream science this thing with the so-called paranormal, where even though vast numbers of people have had these paranormal experiences, they genuinely have had them, mainstream science says they can't have had them because we can't explain how they could have had them, therefore they can't possibly have had them. And it's this confusion between what you believe is possible and what is actually possible that is one of the great ways that people's perception is scrambled. And the whole idea, just to finish the answer, the whole idea is to keep the population in ignorance of everything they need to know to understand their plight and what's happening, understand who they are, to the point where you cross a line where you've got so total control over them that even if they realize what was happening, by then it will be too late. And this is why they have, and this whole agenda for the world, it's incredibly coordinated. The dots connect in the most extraordinary way, but they are presented to the population as if all these stepping stones to this same outcome are all random events and completely unconnected, which keeps people thinking that actually these are just random accidents and there's no coordination. When actually, if you know where we're being taken, you can see that absolutely they're stepping stones to that outcome. And the great thing is that because at the turn of 2020, if you'd have said to people, the world will be like it is by the end of 2022, they would have called you crazy, mad, and they would say that could never happen. We would never let it happen. But because it has happened, that's woken a lot of people up to ask this question. Well, look, if I didn't believe this could happen, but it has, what else do I believe that needs revisiting? And maybe I shouldn't be dismissing things as impossible, because this would, to me, have been impossible in early 2020, but it's happened. It's opened a lot of minds up.
Yeah, so you were saying that we're living two separate worlds.
Yeah.
So one world is for less than 0.01% of the population that rules the world, and the other part is 99.99% of the population. And this 1% manipulates us in every sense through the economic part, because they manipulate us from education, from early education, then in our work, in all, and then in media, in everything. So how do you see us being awake and have a solution for that?
Well, that's a big question, and there are many answers to it. One is getting informed and not getting your information from the mainstream media and believing that they're going to tell you the truth. I mean, well, how funny is that? I worked in the mainstream media when it was much better than it is now, and it was bad enough then. Now it's a catastrophe in terms of truth and factual information. But there's other levels to it which I think are more important. And that's to appreciate that this cult is not trying to hide the nature of reality from us and the nature of the I from us for a bit of fun. It's doing it because it's fundamental to its success, because the whole foundation, I've been saying this for decades now, The whole foundation of human control is to isolate human perception, awareness, in the five senses, in what I call body-mind. The level of consciousness, because we're multi-level consciousness, but that level of consciousness that directly interacts with this world through the conscious mind and through levels of the unconscious mind. And if you can get isolated only in that body, mind, five sense level of awareness and perception, then you've basically put people in a perceptual prison cell. Because what they'll see in that world is a world that's solid, even though it isn't, a world that's physical, and therefore a world that's incredibly limited and has very, very limited potential and is very difficult to change. And in that world of the five senses, you tend to self-identify your I with the labels of a human life. So you will, in reply to someone saying, hello, nice to meet you, who are you? You'll give them a list of labels that are just experiences of a human life. You'll tell them your name, you'll tell them where you live, maybe where you were born. They'll tell you, you tell them maybe your race, your religion, your sexuality. Anyone needs to know that, I don't know. But on all these, you might talk about your income bracket or whatever. And what you're doing is you're self-identifying with these labels. And these labels are experiences, they're not the I. The I is the consciousness, eternal, infinite state of awareness that's having the experience. And the body, mind, five sense level of our perception should be in touch and being influenced by expanded states of awareness beyond this world. Because then, like a computer and a computer operator, the computer is directly interacting with the internet, but the operator's got the bigger picture. It's outside the computer. It can see what the computer can't see, and it's guiding through the keys and the mouse where the computer needs to go. And what happens if you get a computer virus, as they call them? If it's bad enough, then the computer stops responding to the operator. So you can do what you like with the keys and the mouse. The computer's going its own way because it's being directed by the virus now. And that's basically what has happened to humanity, and it's been done systematically. So that the basic technique is to isolate perception and attention in the five senses, what I call the bubble, and then program that isolated state of awareness with a perception of reality that suits the agenda. And then we're back to the education system and the media and all that stuff that is all part of this perceptual download. And when we talk about awakening, what is that? It's simply expanding your point of attention, your point of awareness out of that five sense bubble and into more expanded states of consciousness. And that's why when people go through this awakening process, they start to see the world completely differently, because they've stopped looking at it like that and they've started looking at it like that. And from this point of view, you see the panorama, you can see the dots connect and how they connect, whereas there you can only see individual dots, and the world changes. And so if you are this global cult, which at its core is of very, very few people, compared with the global population, it's tiny, you have to make sure that five sense level of awareness is not being influenced in its insight, in its intuition, in its awareness by expanded states of consciousness. And that's the thing, really. And the perceptual download that I talked about earlier is all about focusing attention and identifying everything with the world of the scene. And, people don't know this, the vast majority of people don't know this. The world of the scene, what we call visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see as a visual reality, is so tiny, it's hysterical. It's ridiculous. It's such a tiny band of frequency that we actually call the visible world. Everything beyond that band of frequency is invisible to us. Infinity's out there, but we can't see it because of the way the body-mind decodes reality. And so it's a process from the moment you come into this world to put you in that postage stamp consensus band of ignorance and keep you going until you go out the other end. And the challenge to that, which is now beginning to happen with more and more and more people, far more than ever before in the 32 years I've been doing it, massively more. They're starting to break out of those prison cell bubbles and start to ask the big questions. And that's another point, you know, earlier in my life, I used to think, why don't people ask who are we? What is this place? What are we doing here? Why don't they ask those things? I mean, it should be a fundamental tenet of everything. You know, how can we get an understanding of what we're experiencing if we don't know what we're experiencing? We don't know where it is, what it is, who we are, where we come from, where we go. These are the big questions. Now, it's an important point that why don't people ask those big questions in enormous numbers? Why don't the media explore those big questions? Why doesn't the education system explore those big questions as a fundamental pillar and foundation of education? Because they don't want us exploring those things, because they want to keep us in ignorance. Because once we realize the nature of the reality we're experiencing and how we interact with it, then we can realize that actually we control our own lives, or we can control our own lives, and not let outside forces control it for us.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. You know, we are kept in our five senses with being afraid of everything, especially in countries like Brazil. We're a third world country, and we are a very interesting country because we are a union of different cultures and religions living in one ecosystem, and we never had any internal war or anything. We are super, friendly. Brazilians are super friendly. Yeah. And not only Brazilian, but the other Portuguese-speaking countries, they're super friendly. But the problem is, since we have been grown up with different religions, and those religions put us in different boxes because they came with the answers for us. So where do we come from? They say. Why you're here? They say everything to us. So I will ask you, who are we? What is this place?
Well, you picked up a very important point there. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in what they call the universe. Some say it's as high as 0.5%, but it's absolutely tiny. And visible light, which is the only band of frequency that we can see, is a smear, and it is a smear of the 0.005%. And what religions are saying, all of them, basically, is all you need to know to understand the world, all you need to know to comprehend everything, is between the covers of a single book within a smear of 0.005% of what exists in the universe. That is insane. And you're absolutely right in what you say, that we are being told what to believe about these big questions. I mean, if you look at the mainstream science, it's basically we come from nowhere and we go to nowhere. And if it's religion, it's some judgmental God is calling the shots. So I rejected both of those at a very early age, but I got on with my life in football and what have you, journalism. And I didn't really look at, okay, so what is it then? Until, I had this incredible head-blowing spiritual experience, an awakening in 1990. And what I came into this arena, although I'm well known for the names, dates, places, conspiracy, I came into this arena seeking to know those big questions, the answers to those big questions. And still today, my great passion above everything is the nature of reality and how we interact with it, because that's it dictates and gives us the means to take control of our own life, as I say, to stop life living us and for us to start living life. Because most people, life lives them. You kind of indicated earlier, people just go through their life sleepwalking, being sort of guided by authority in their various expressions. And that's not who we are. That's who we have been manipulated to think we are, and who manipulated to behave as if we are. So if we, this is I don't know where to go with this, because there's so many levels and so many parts of it. But let's just say, okay, so who am I? What's your I, or your ultimate I? It's a state of awareness. It's simply a state of being aware, I would suggest. And what we call form is a vehicle for our awareness, our state of being aware, to experience different situations and different experiences. Now, okay, we are a state of awareness. Okay, but how aware? That's the point. This consciousness that we're part of, this consciousness that we're all an expression of, it's where this whole thing about we are one comes from, is infinite in nature. And so how many people are accessing a big chunk of that consciousness with all its potential insight, understanding, intuitive knowing, all that? Not that many, compared with the fact that everyone has the potential to do that. And the real reason they're not is because their focus of attention has been put in this body, mind, five senses. So it is all literally, in the end, about the span of your attention. Are you so focused in your attention that you can only see and perceive your physical body and your physical labels and experiences? Or are you more expanded in your span of attention so that you realize that this is actually just a brief experience of a much greater you? And obviously, where this cult wants people is here. And the stadium in which this whole control of human society plays out is the stadium of perception. And it's perception that will set us free, or it's perception, as it has up to this point, that will enslave us. And for this reason, if you look at the world of the five senses, which is the one that we experience all the time, then it sees everything as apart from everything else. So it sees different forms, and because it's only seeing a certain band of frequency, and that band of frequency relates to what we call form, objects. And so it sees objects, but it sees objects as apart from everything else, and it sees itself as apart from everything else, because the visual band of frequency does not go deep enough into the field for you to see that actually beyond the form is a infinite field of consciousness that connects everything. So like the fish and sea life are all connected by the ocean. And, you know, the fish may not be aware of it, but they might think they're all individuals, connected individuals, but the ocean connects them all. And we live in this ocean of consciousness, possibility, probability, that that we, in a five sense way, can't see. So if you are only viewing the world through the five senses, to you, everything is apart from everything else. Now, first of all, that gives you a phenomenal potential to divide and rule the population, because division, well, the five senses can only see division. But the greater self is aware that there is no division. Everything is connected. So this makes things like racism ridiculous, because we're all part of the same consciousness. You know, what we're arguing about the color of the spacesuit for? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's just a vehicle to experience. Get on with it. But to the cult, it's a wonderful way of dividing and ruling people by keeping them in this perception of apartness and separation. And that's an expression of this great separation between that five sense body mind level and expanded awareness. They need to separate those two things for reasons I've described. So why is perception so important? Because every time every thought that we have, every emotion that we feel is generating a frequency. And the frequencies are represented by the nature of the thought and the emotion. So emotions like depression and hatred and fear and anxiety are very low, slow frequencies. That's why when we're in these states, we can say, oh, I feel so heavy today. It's because the energetic field, our energetic field, of which the body is an expression, is being impacted by the slow, low frequencies of what we're putting out. And thus it goes into a state of greater density. And when we feel joy and love and happiness, people say, I feel so light today, because those frequencies are fast and quick and high. And so what we call our perception is the sum total of those frequencies. And so what we're putting out as frequencies is dictating how we interact with this field, this sea, this ocean of potentiality and possibility that we're all part of. So if you have a self-identity, a perception that you are insignificant, that you have no power, that you are not in control of your life, and you have to look to authority to tell you what to think, then that is a sense of limitation, a massive sense of limitation. And that perception of limitation will generate frequencies that are expressions of limitation. So you will be interacting with this field of possibility and probability in a very, very low and narrow band of frequency. So the possibility and probability you're able to interact with and manifest as an experience is very, very limited. Not because it has to be, but because your belief becomes your experience in this way. What you believe, you perceive. What you perceive, you experience because of this interaction. So someone with that little me sense of self will live a little me life. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's a feedback loop between your perception and possibility and probability, in which your perception is manifesting itself through. And so that's where the cult wants us, in these low vibrational, limited states of perception and self-identity of perception. So that actually what it's doing, it knows that this is big part of what's passed on through the secret society network. It knows that if it can get our perception through this this interaction, it will dictate our experience. So if you want people to leave you alone so you can go on doing what you want with the world without any pushback or any challenge, you want people in that state of being. And we've seen vast numbers of people in the COVID era who are in that state of being. That's why what's happened has happened. But then you see the experience of people who are in a different perceptual state, the awakening perceptual state, because we're always awakening. And that's when people start to expand their sense of the possible. Out of the 5 sense program, they start to reevaluate their self-identity from just the labels of a human life to I am the consciousness having those experiences, eternal, infinite state of awareness. And what that does is from that myopia of self-identity, which creates a myopia of perceptual field, suddenly that expansion of self-identity becomes an expansion of your consciousness into greater and greater swathes and higher frequencies of the infinite field. And what happens, of course, when people go through that is they notice that their life changes. They get this synchronicity, coincidences happen. Fancy seeing you here. What's the chances of that? Oh, I got a bit of luck just when I needed it. But it's not luck. The more you expand your awareness to interact with greater and greater swathes of possibility, the more possibilities you're able to manifest as an experience. So your life starts to expand. It becomes much more of an adventure and not just an existence. You become far more aware of your true potential to control your own life and your own experience by changing your perception. And this is, of course, the last thing this cult wants. It doesn't want expanded awareness. It can't manipulate that. It needs people in the 5 sense prison cell, and then it can manipulate that as it's shown. So, people say, what's the answer? And, you can do the physical human world stuff, or start an organization, the classic, we must start a new political party. That's absolutely waste of space. That is, you're never going to change anything through politics. Politics is there to stop it changing and to advance this agenda. It's not there to change anything. It's the people that have to change it by simply ceasing to cooperate with their own enslavement. And, there's billions of us, there's a handful of them. I think I see a way out of this, but only if people can see actually A, what's going on, and B, where the real power is. And it's not with authority, it's with us. Authority's power that's recycled against us is only the power we've given to them in the form of acquiescence. That's all it is. So if you get down to the foundations of how we change everything, is we change ourselves. And so the fundamental bottom line is self-identity. Who do you think you are? Do you think you are someone who's just a body, and for what the biblical 70 years and 10, and that's who you are? Or do you think that you are subject to some judgmental God judging you second by second? Or do you realize that you are actually an expression of what people call God? You are an expression of this infinite state of awareness. And therefore, you have the potential to take control of your life and your reality. And those two groups of people will live very different lives. And it's this awakening to the true self that's going to change things, because it's the being put to sleep into what I call phantom self, the fake self of human labels, that has got us into this situation.
Yeah, so you were saying that, first of all, we are energy, and we choose our energy of love, of construction, of production, of making things happen, or the energy of fear, the ego. It's for me, it's not for you. It's the energy that that it's ruling our planet right now.
Well, that's an interesting point, because you keep using the word fear. And it's right that you do, because fear is the greatest tool of human control. And what did I say earlier about emotions and thoughts giving out frequencies? That fear is a very low, slow frequency. And anxiety, depression, and resentment, these are all expressions of fear, actually. So the consciousness, because in the end, you've got the people in form in this cult, manipulating the humans in form in the population, but people, it doesn't matter if you're an extraterrestrial or a human or a cult member. The reason you behave as you do is because of your state of consciousness. It's your state of consciousness that dictates your behavior. So it don't matter what you look like. It matters what you are in terms of consciousness. So the state of consciousness of this cult and that which is behind the cult from the shadows, by the very nature that it seeks to control and impose its will upon the population in general, means that it's in a very, very low level state of awareness, because only idiots and morons want to control other people. Something else too, only insecure people want to control other people, because insecure people are very ill at ease with states of flux where they can't call the outcome. This cult is terrified of situations that it can't call the outcome. That's why if the cult was involved in a football match, it'd have to control both sides and the referee, so it knew the score before the first ball was kicked. That's insecurity. You look at any control freak you've ever come across, all control freaks are insecure because they have to control everything to pander to their insecurity. Whereas secure people, truly awakening people, are quite happy with states of flux. It makes life interesting. It makes life spontaneous and gives you variety of experience. So states of flux are no problem to someone who's secure. So we're dealing, therefore, with a state of consciousness that's deeply distorted. Evil, which is the absence of love in my definition. You take love out of anything and you have what we call evil. And so what we need is an infusion of love, quite obviously. But also the state of awareness is in a very low vibrational state. And it's in the frequency band of fear. This is the point that this consciousness, which the Native American tribal group called the Cree call Wetiko, a mind virus, Wetiko, it is in a state of fear itself. That's what its insecurity comes from, because it's actually feeding off human energy, and without being able to do that, it's in serious trouble. It needs us vastly more than we need it. In fact, we don't need it at all. And so it's very dependent on us. I go into all this in the books in detail. And so it's in a constant state of fear of being found out. And how does it feed off us? Well, if you're in a low frequency state, in the realm of fear and all anxiety, which it is, for all its bravado, it is, then if you're going to feed off someone else's energy and get your energetic sustenance from that, like the energetic vampires, which is what they are, then you can only do that with people who are in the same frequency band that you're in. Otherwise, you can't attach to them, just like radio stations on different wavelengths can't attach to each other. So, well, neither can they. So what they have to do is draw humanity, by the way they structure society, into these fear and anxiety states of being, resentment, hatred, anything like that, so that they enter this frequency layer of this, if you like, Watiko. And once that's done, there can be an attachment so that energy can be vampired, but also that attachment allows perceptual programming to pass between the two. And basically mass possession, if you like. When I realized that this cult existed and what it was doing, I wanted to know when it started, and I wanted to know how it could do what it did and how far back it went and all the rest of it. And I found, as I scanned around the ancient world and native cultures, that actually they all basically refer to it, a hidden force manipulating human society by manipulating human mind, perception. So if you look at the Christian religion, it talks about the devil and Satan and demons. You look at the Gnostics, which are a kind of semi-Christian religion. Their devil is called Yaldabaoth, and their demons are called archons, or Greek for rulers. You look at the Islamic religion, and they talk about the jinn and the way the jinn manipulate from the unseen. Everywhere you look, and then, like I say, you go into the Native American and Native Canadian arena, and you come across this old concept of Watiko. So I've studied all this and seen that they're actually talking about the same thing. So in the end, what's interesting now is that I'm hearing more and more people who would have never said it before, who are saying, it's a spiritual war we're in, isn't it? And I don't like the word war, but it is a spiritual tussle between that which seeks to love, freedom, justice, fairness, and that which seeks control, not from here and here, seeks control. And that's where we're at. And so this force of control has been manipulating humanity along a road for a long time in our perception of time. And the process has been, from the ancient world to now, to incessantly centralize power and decision making. Because the more you centralize power, the more power you have at the center for the few. Every step towards more centralization of power is a step towards fewer and fewer people dictating to more and more people. So we had a situation at one time where humans organized themselves into tribes. Then we had this massive change when the tribes came together and formed themselves into nations. Now a few people at the center of the nation are dictating to all that group of former tribes that were before deciding for themselves. And now in places like Europe and the United Nations and all these global organizations, you're seeing the amalgamation of the nations into control groups, where a few at the center of, say, the European Union dictate to all the members of the European Union throughout Europe. And all the time you've had this this move to fewer and fewer people controlling more and more. One of the biggest periods when this happened was colonialization, because this cult can be tracked out of Sumer, Babylon, Egypt, and up into Rome for the Roman Empire, and then up into Europe for the European empires, and especially the British Empire. And then these cult-owned countries by then in Europe, not least the British, but the others too, they then colonized the world. And they took it over. And basically the cult went global. And then when we had this sleight of hand, which was the European nations giving independence to the former colonies, that's not what happened. They left out in those countries the secret society networks and particular family groupings that operate in those countries for the cult. And they've gone on controlling the country ever since. It's just that they've moved from something you can see, colonial rule, you know who your masters are, to covert control and manipulation, where you control two or three of the three major political parties in a country. So it doesn't matter if party A, party B, or even party C get in, because you're controlling all of them. And so we have all these one-party states now, cult party states, that masquerade as multiple party states, which are supposed to offer political choice when it's all an illusion. And then after the colonial period allowed that initial explosion to global influence of the cult, then we went into the globalization period, which added more extremes to that. And now we have a situation where a tiny few people at the center of this web are dictating global events. And so what they've done is they've used a technique which I coined back in the 1990s of problem, reaction, solution. You create the problem or the illusion of it. You then tell the public through an unquestioning media what to think of the problem, which is what you want them to think of the problem. And you want at stage 2 a reaction to the problem from the public that basically says either do something or is open to what you suggest you've got to do in reaction to the problem. And then we move to stage 3 after the problem and the reaction. The people that have manipulated the problem or the illusion of it then offer the solutions to the problems they've created. And those solutions are always advancing this agenda towards total global dystopia and centralization of global power. So if you look at human-caused climate change and you look at the COVID era, they are another expression of this technique, which I call no problem reaction solution, in the sense that there's not a real problem, but you've manipulated the perception of a problem, and thus you can offer the solution to what people perceive as the problem. So again, it's a mind game. You don't even need a real problem. You just need to for people to believe there's one, and then they'll be open to you changing the world in reaction to the problem, not really to advance your agenda. So if you look at the solutions to human-caused climate change, and what have they been? The imposition of centralized control over every area of our lives, down to the fine detail. And this is a classic, what I call no problem reaction solution. And if you look at what they're saying must happen to save the world from human-caused climate change, and what they've said must happen to save the world from COVID, they're the same, basically. They're centralization of global power. Because if you want to transform something globally, then you have to have a real or manufactured global problem, a global problem in need of a global solution. And then you can go to the global level and transform everywhere at the same time. So if you look at the COVID response, which has come out of the World Health Organization, which is a 100% owned and created by the Rockefellers in 1948 cult organization, then basically what it has said has been carried out by almost every nation on earth. I mean, you would think that, you have a situation like that individual nations with individual people, you would think, would maybe have different ways of dealing with it. But overwhelmingly, it's been the same. And it's because COVID and human-caused climate change are hoaxes of the same people. So you have literally the same people involved in both. You've got Bill Gates, who is Mr. Vaccine, Mr. Fake Vaccine, Mr. Lockdown. And he takes time out from that in February of 2021 to publish a book telling the world how it must change to deal with human-caused climate change. These same people are involved in both because the reason for both is the same.
Through the sounds, we all have to earn competition into collaboration. Me and you, that's for real, true. To be free economically, we got to have the power to choose. It's you and me. We need to know the values of this and that. We need to know what we buy and where we get it at. Invest in the truth, consuming what we do. It's the freedom for me and you. It's the freedom for me and you. Yeah, it's the freedom for me and you. One more time, yeah, it's the freedom for me and you.
But you did the way you're playing the game is not the same, no way. Think you're gonna give me some happy. I think there's something you should know. I think it's time I told you so. There's something deep inside of me. There's someone else I've got to be. Take back your pictures in my frame. Take back your singing in the rain. Just hope you understand. Sometimes the clothes do not make the man. All we have to do now is take these lies and make them true somehow. All we have to see is that I don't belong to you and you don't belong to me. Yeah, yeah. Freedom, I won't let you down. Freedom, will not give you up. Freedom, have some faith in yourself. What you say, think that. Freedom, I won't let you down. Freedom, will not give you up. Freedom, have some faith in yourself. What you say, think that. Freedom, freedom, we. You got to give me what you say. Freedom, 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 we. You got to give me what you say. Us, we.